Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the KMB Music Den. I am everybody's friend, Keith, and sir, you are,
As always, I'm Brad.
as always, Brad. How you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, just
Liking the,
ready to do some talking about some music here.
yeah, I'm liking your jersey there.
Trying, we're
Oh,
working on that first place. Yeah,
yeah,
gotta rep,
represent,
gotta
represent.
rep.
All right, so we are ready once again, folks at home who are playing along, or if you're new to this and you clicked on it because you love Genesis. This is a little series we started recently, which we're having a ton of fun with, called the Goldilocks game. So the Goldilocks game is we are going to take an album that is considered to be a classic, and we are going to listen to it, do a deep dive on it, and really decide. Each of us is going to make our own decision as playing the role of Goldilocks. Is the album underrated, overrated, or is that porridge taste just right? Is it rated just right? So this is in one that I decided to pick. It's the last album of Peter Gabriel's stand with the band as lead singer and frontman, um, circus leader, if you will, at the
Mhm.
and it was their sixth studio album, and like I said, final with Peter Gabriel at the helm. Um, I've always found this album really interesting. So I decided, hey, let's put it through the Goldilocks gauntlet, see how we do here. So, Brad, as I like to usually start and say,
Yeah,
before diving into this one, what was your history with Genesis, your level of fandom? Obviously, there's kind of two eras. There's the Gabriel era, there's the Collins era. So, what are you, kind of where did you stand with Genesis before you dove into the Lamb?
prior to this album, my experience 90% of it was with the Collins era.
Sure.
I was not too familiar with the Gabriel era. I know a lot of Gabriel on his own,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of Genesis with Collins, not Genesis with Gabriel. So this was a unique step back for me to see exactly what we would be hearing with a different frontman there. Um, but I gotta thank you. This thing's a behemoth. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of time this one took to
Uh,
dig in. 94 minutes. This beast, uh,
yeah.
longest Genesis album ever to this day. So I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. Yeah.
you certainly picked one with a lot of songs. So
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that too, because there's a point that we'll discuss later about, some people have said, and even members of the band themselves had said, if they trimmed it down, maybe it would be, leaner, meaner, easier to digest, and might have been even more popular. Who knows? But we'll get to that. Um, so yeah, my experience is similar to yours, and I think it has to do with our age, growing up,
sure.
hearing the Collins era on the radio all the time. So I do have I have a lot of Genesis, the early stuff on vinyl actually. So probably a little more familiar with the Gabriel era than you were going into this, but not overly familiar. Um, so yeah, two very distinct eras. I mean, the first few albums with Collins on lead vocals still had a lot of that proggy feel and kind of the fantasy based lyrics and things like that. And then of course, in the 80s they just went full on pop and just
Yeah,
did extremely well. I mean, I
yeah.
the Invisible Touch album and the self-titled album in the early 80s I think are fantastic. Just a totally different thing. Sounds like two different bands. So yeah, I mean, this was an undertaking, like you said, a lot of songs, a lot to chew on here. I did a little bit of research, and this is one of those things where I found it interesting that I feel like it's more rewarding to listen to the album knowing some of the backstory and some of the concept and where Gabriel was going with this whole tale, of this Puerto Rican youth from New York City,
Hmm.
named Rail. Um, it's very involved. It's very strange too.
It
But
is. Yeah.
what I like about this album, though, um, is you can listen to these songs that can be very powerful, can be very delicate and beautiful. It runs the gamut very well. You can enjoy this album without really knowing too much about the story, but I think it's a better listen if you do. Is that fair?
Oh, I agree 100%. I'm a big fan of concept albums. Anytime there's a concept worked into the storyline of an album. I'm really big on it, and this one's really well done. In the
Yeah.
sense that this is not like some like, hey, let's take a 10-minute story and turn it into an album.
Yeah.
This could be a movie. I mean, and it's I'm still wrapping my head around what I'm piecing together out of the lyrics and the meaning behind the tracks. I mean, it's very well done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this, like I said, I think on the one where we set it up on the last Goldilocks that we were going to do this, this one kind of in some ways seems to be an outlier in their catalog. A lot of people, if they're more into the Gabriel era, will say, that their favorite album was Selling England by the Pound, or Foxtrot, Nursery Crime, any one of those. And this was kind of not kind of, it was the swan song for Peter Gabriel as the
But
front
yeah,
man. And what a way to go out. I mean, my goodness, this, like you said, you put it well, it's a behemoth. Um, Now, I did learn that the band, there was some tension in the band. And so it makes a
mm-hmm.
lot of sense that this was Gabriel's last album. I think he
Yeah,
was itching to do his own thing. He was clashing with some of the band members as far as, with this album in particular, the length of it, how involved it was. But I found it interesting, and I think this speaks to Peter Gabriel's absolute genius as a songwriter, and melody writer, which I'll get to. But they would do a lot of these songs as instrumentals and jam them out with the band musically, and while they were recording this, and he would be in a totally different room listening to what they had come up with, before, or maybe live, however they did that technology wise, and coming up with concepts, lyrics, melodies, separately on his own, like he was kind of almost like a lab rat in another room.
yeah,
It was a bit unusual way to do it, but gosh, I mean, look at the results.
yeah. It's a very fascinating album, and you're right. From what I understood, he basically took the keys to everything lyrical and, like you said, melody, and didn't want to hand that to anybody else, from what I was understanding. So there was
Yeah.
some definite tension there.
Yeah. They say sometimes when there's tension and conflict, it makes for some of the best music.
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, I think, okay, well, before we get too much more into this, let's talk about what we always talk about with these. So, where do you think this album falls on the 500 greatest albums for Rolling Stone?
It's a good question. I didn't look. I go into these. I try not to do much reviewing, or not say reviewing, but research ahead of time. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty. Is it in the 500?
I'm glad you asked that question because the answer is no.
I kind of thought it might not be. Okay.
Yeah, it's not in
Yeah.
this book. Not only that, the band Genesis is not in this book at all.
Oh, wow. Now that does surprise me there. That does
See,
surprise me. Yeah.
and that brings up, I'm going to do a little bit of a quick detour on this. That brings up something that kind of bugs me about lists like these. When, I love Bob Dylan, I love the
Mhm.
Beatles, I love the Rolling Stones, some of the greatest of all time. But when you put almost every album that some of those bands ever released, and just depending on where the ranking order is among the 500, and you don't even mention a band like Genesis,
That's pretty.
um, I don't know. And, I don't mean that it should be one album per artist on all these lists, and I don't mean that Genesis should get a participation trophy.
No.
Um, but they deserve to be in here, whether you think it's The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway or a different album. Gosh, do they deserve to be in this book or what? I mean, that's kind of my gripe there.
Yeah, it just seems shocking that they're not considered to have released a top 500 album when
Yeah,
you see some of the other albums that are in there. I mean, that's kind of shocking.
yeah, exactly. And for those that have been following along, it is also not in this 100 greatest albums from VH1 book, obviously, either. Um, so that aside, I was a little surprised by that, but then again, not too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I found this album to be a great listen. It is a bit arduous, like you said, with the 94 minutes of music,
Big.
20 some songs. Um, Now, again, like I alluded to earlier, there were members of the band, and then subsequently, fans and reviewers after it was released, that were saying, maybe this should have been trimmed down. There were songs, there's some instrumental songs, which I think, I mean, that's pretty par for the course with progressive
Sure.
rock albums. I don't know what the problem would be with that. Um, But Tony Banks, in particular, the amazing keyboard player for Genesis, really wanted to streamline this, and Gabriel wasn't having it.
I wouldn't have either, honestly.
Yeah.
I always look at things in the artistic point of view, where this is a piece of art, and I think this all goes into one story. I mean, if you start cutting pieces and you're cutting storyline. So I don't see how
Yeah.
you'd be able to do that without this not being a one piece of you're pulling thread from a piece of clothing. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Good way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah. Yeah. No, and this is the kind of album where I'm sure you've found this already. Every time you listen to it, you find something different.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
something a light bulb goes off about the lyrics and the story overall more and more as you listen to it. Um, I think this album has a near perfect, if not perfect, blend of those upbeat, epic kind of prog songs, and then those slower, more pensive ballad type songs, and of course the instrumental passages. So if you think about it, it really checks all the boxes as far as a great prog rock album, a great concept album. Um, and I think there's a reason that some of the greatest concept albums of all time, Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, okay.
Sure.
OK Computer, Radiohead. I think the concepts with Pink Floyd, for example, are so universal to everyone. Time, money, all that stuff that was on
Sure.
Dark Side. This story is very, very specific. It's very kind of out in left field. There's some weird stuff in here. There's some stuff that's very, very much you have to use your imagination. Quite frankly, depending on how you look at it, there's some perverse stuff in here.
Oh, there is, sure.
Yeah, so which I think makes it very interesting and unique. But I think that, any of these books that you would see lists of, 100 greatest, 500 greatest, whatever it may be, there's no way Dark Side of the Moon isn't on in these books. I don't even have to look. I would just know it.
Yeah.
And OK Computer is in these books. No, absolutely no doubt. And they should be. But I'm wondering if that's why this sometimes gets overlooked because of the storyline. I think some people feel, maybe wrongly so, and I maybe felt little bit of this initially as well, that you feel like you have to kind of be like a college professor to understand what the hell's going on here.
You do. Well, that's the great thing about this and art in general is the best art, I think, takes time to wrap your head around it. It's not just sugar pops and 2-minute songs and happy,
Yeah.
This is I'm going to tip my hat in my hand here. I was so into this album going in after the first or second listen that I went and I did buy it on vinyl. So I do have the vinyl copy.
Wow.
Now, the reason I bring that up now is even this goes into the artistic part of it. The pictures that are on the cover.
Yeah.
The inside has the story.
Yeah.
If you read.
Yeah.
And then it has pictures that seem to go along with where Rael was going and where in the storyline things were.
Yeah.
So I mean, all in all, it was just a very, even down to the vinyl cover itself and the inserts and it is all part of the story. So big time art like that, I think is great because it does take a couple sittings. You got to sit down with it and really get in and learn the album.
Well, you beat me again to buying the vinyl. You did that with the Jam earlier, and now you got my copy of Genesis. I hope they restock it.
There was 2 in stock, so.
Oh, okay. I gotta get out there. I actually have that gift certificate still from Christmas.
Perfect.
So yeah, and like I said before too, it's just I don't know. My music collection is just random as far as what I find at a good price, and things like that. But it's so strange because I'm pretty sure I have just about every single Genesis album either on vinyl or CD, except this one. And just because I never came across it at a good price or whatever, it's not that the Lamb sucks, I'm not getting that. It was never that at all.
Yeah.
I've always been very intrigued by this album, actually, even before I was totally, immersed and familiar with it. Like I feel like I'm getting to that point now. So you don't, you mentioned this earlier. I agree with you. You don't buy the whole business about, it could have been shorter and.
Not in a situation like this, because you're not writing 12 pop songs or 12 individual tracks. This is a story. I mean, he created a storyline that he basically wrote a soundtrack around. So
Exactly.
how can you pull certain songs out and not have holes in the story? So I mean, you can't. I don't see how it would work.
Yeah, and the story is very involved. It's some of
Yep.
it is fantasy like, and Rail is trapped in these different like he's trapped in a cave at one point.
Hmm.
And he even sings about the stalactites and stalagmites, and he sees his brother John, he's calling out to
Yep.
him, and like I said, when I did a little more reading about all this, I just found it to be an even more enjoyable listen. But and like I said earlier, you don't necessarily have to know the story to enjoy it as a great music. Um but yeah, and I do when we talk about should songs be cut, should have been streamlined, that whole argument by some people. I'll never forget. I saw an interview with Paul McCartney regarding the White Album.
Yeah.
And he said some people say this and some people said that, and his very Paul way, he said, "It's the bloody White Album. It's the Beatles." Kind of like it is what it is. Don't
Yeah.
overthink it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't imagine anything not being on the White Album. It's just a great melting pot of
Hmm.
everything. Um, but yeah, like I said, like I alluded to earlier, there's some very, there's a lot of psychology involved in this.
There is.
There's some sexual things. Like the song "Counting Out Time." The first
Hmm.
time I heard this lyric, I was just like kind of laughing, where he sings, "Erogenous zones, I love you. Without them, oh, without you, what would a poor boy do?" I
Yeah.
just and it's sung in this very dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 very
Yeah.
sing-songy way. It's just funny to me. And then standout tracks. There's so many, but a lot of people when they talk about this album, they obviously talk about the title song.
Yeah.
I also see and hear a lot of love for the Carpet Crawlers.
That's a great
And
track.
I love that lyric. The carpet crawlers heed their callers. We've got to get in to get out.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
And even just hearing that in my head now, that we've got to get in to get
Yep.
out. These melodies, this is Gabriel's genius. These melodies, a lot of them are very complex,
Hmm.
but the way they fit with the music and the way he sings them, it's like you almost can't imagine the song going any other way than what
No,
he
not at all.
chose,
Not at
which
all.
is great. I mean, it's
Yep.
so genius. But yeah, I mean, as I listen more and more, the melodies really are what jumped out at me as like, man, this is some special stuff here.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I mean, just like you said, the storyline, the music, everything about this was fantastic for me. I mean, it caught me off guard. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did,
Yeah.
but then I realized I enjoyed it. But now I have to figure it out. Like it's because like you're
Yeah.
right, you can enjoy it without knowing what it's about. But yeah, but it's a concept album. I always have to know what the story is, and I'm
Yeah.
still working on that.
So what's your background and level of fandom with the genre of prog rock in general? You've got your Yes, you've got King Crimson, you've got
Yeah,
Rush.
yeah.
Where do you stand?
I mean, it's not my favorite genre. I don't listen to a lot of prog rock.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, some of the newer stuff like Porcupine Tree, I'll listen to a lot.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so I mean, that's a newer prog. I didn't really realize that Genesis had much of a prog sound because most of the Genesis I knew was Invisible Touch era and up. Like the more softball, like fun.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, this was impressive. I mean, I really enjoyed the musicianship. Um, Rush would be another one that I have listened to a lot. But outside of that, I'm not as experienced when it comes to prog rock.
Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna wait a while to keep this diverse for everyone, but there's an album I already had on the list I've been generating that I think you'll like a lot, which we'll get to. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I have a decent amount of prog rock in my collection, especially vinyl. I don't find that I reach for it a ton, but when I do, um, it's like it's kind of like I said about some other things in the past on the channel where I am almost more impressed by it than moved by it.
Yes,
um,
yeah.
but that being said, this is different. I mean, this diving into this album it's really kind of lightning in a bottle. It's a moment in time.
Hmm.
Um, Now this is probably going to prompt me to go back and revisit some of those Gabriel albums that I do know, but I don't know, super well.
Sure.
I assume you might be doing that.
Oh, absolutely,
Have you
absolutely.
already started, or you didn't have time?
Started. Yep, starting from the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I know. Foxtrot is very well thought of. Selling England by the Pound.
Mhm.
So all of them really, of the Gabriel era. And then, like I said, the beginning of that Collins era was still kind of proggy and similar to what they were doing with Gabriel, just with Collins' voice. Um, which, yeah, I mean, geez, we could do a whole bit video on the two different bands and everything. Um, but okay, well, this is Goldilocks, so I think I know what you're gonna say because you ran out and ran out and bought the record. But for you, sir, is this underrated, overrated, or rated just right?
This is highly underrated. Just because I wasn't overly aware of this album to begin with,
Yeah.
and this is one that's going to be one of my favorite concept albums, which is a thing that I really enjoy is concept albums. So yeah, this to me is highly underrated, and the fact that it's not even listed in the top 500, I mean that's surprising. I find that surprising.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think this is underrated as well. I'm not going to use the word highly only because I know among Genesis fans, among prog fans, um, s- um, among some critics and some factions in the
Mm-hmm.
music world, this is very highly revered.
Okay.
Um, but generally speaking, you are right, and I do land on the underrated side of the porridge here, because yeah, I don't know. I just, like I said before, I think those concept albums like Dark Side of the Moon and OK
Yep.
Computer, and there's so many. I'm missing some here as I talk, but um, I just think that the themes were more universal, so people latched onto them. Whereas this requires you to really, put your
Mm-hmm.
glasses on and roll up your sleeves and get involved, which
Yeah, it
not
does.
not everyone is willing to do, I guess.
No, I don't, and because it's a journey on this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fantastic journey. Um, So yeah, I'm so glad that we did this one. And for the folks at home, it's so rewarding that people are watching. But honestly, Brad, just even between me and you, the fact that, this is something that I just decided to pick,
Yeah.
and you ran out and bought it because you loved it so much, like that is so rewarding for me. And vice versa, I mean, you've picked some great stuff already too. But I really love what we're doing with this series.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think people are enjoying it, and I think we have a handful already of people that really are avid viewers, and we thank you so much. Lots of great comments, lots of people that comment
Mm-hmm.
frequently. You know who you are. At some point in some of these videos, we'll name check you and be a little more diligent about that. So I apologize offhand, not being able to name specific subscribers, but you know who you are, and we appreciate you very much. But people that are diving in, I saw someone that commented on one of our REM videos and said, "Oh, thank you so much. I'm gonna start buying up some of their albums now." And just I don't know, it's just so
Yeah.
rewarding to share our love of music with everyone, and that's why we started this.
We have smart subscribers too. I love their comments. These
Yeah,
are music fans like us, man. You get in there and start reading, they really got some good opinions, and I go, shit, I gotta go back and listen to that. Like they'll mention something. Yeah, so I
yeah,
mean, it's great. It's great.
yeah, and I love it when they respectfully disagree or challenge us on things. I really do. I think that's
For
cool.
Cross Idiots, yeah.
Yeah. Some of them figured it out already. Um, but it's an open discussion.
Yep.
So, Brad, I picked Genesis. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. We both say it's underrated. So hopefully people check it out if they're not familiar. But you know what I'm going to say? It's your turn. What are we going
Yep.
to do next for the Goldilocks game? It's your pick, buddy.
Well, this one came almost as a recommendation from
Okay.
somebody who says, I like what you're doing with this. I'm curious what you guys think of this album because this is a band that everybody knows. Everybody knows this band.
Yeah.
But there's a level of fandom to it. And I can say going in, I know a handful of songs, not even which albums they belong to half the time.
Okay.
So I said, well, what is the best album? And they said, this is the one. This is the one to go with. Grateful
Okay.
Dead, American Beauty.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're
Okay.
going to listen to American Beauty and decide, is this classic Grateful Dead just right, not as good as we expected, or underrated? But we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited because this is a band I should know more about. And
Yeah.
I'm a little curious to see what it's like to sit down. Most of the time I've listened to this band has been live albums, live cuts, live. I've never really sat down with an album, just a studio album there. So curious
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, you beat me to it. That's what I was going to say. So many people say, bag the studio stuff, just get Live 72 and, get this and
Yeah.
that and the other thing.
Yep.
Which, I think sells them short a bit. I'm 99% sure that I can show
Oh,
the
you got
folks.
this.
I think I have it on vinyl here. Let's take a quick look.
Uh-oh.
Oh, wait, on the front here. G is for Grateful Dead. Oh, no.
You don't have it?
Oh, you know what it is? I only have Working Man's Dead on vinyl because I have American Beauty on CD.
Ah, there we go. Well,
Yeah.
so are you
That
very
was
familiar
part.
with this album?
I am. I couldn't list all the songs offhand, but I mean I've listened to it. It's probably the Grateful Dead album that I've listened to the most as far as their
Okay.
studio albums over time. That being said, I'm not like super familiar. So this I think this is a great pick. Great pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. We'll be able to see where this one stacks up, and is it better than live, or should you just listen to live from that one? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe live in '72 is the way to go for everything on that, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well, that's another reason I like this pick is because, of all the people that do say, hey, just get the live stuff. Um, so that'll be another kind of whole side conversation running throughout that next video
Yep.
we do for Goldilocks. So, all right, folks, you heard the man has spoken. As always, Brad said we are going to dive into American Beauty by the Grateful Dead. So please dive in with us. But of course, before we move on to that, make sure you listen to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis. Put your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that this album is underrated? Do you think it's just right? People get it just right. You think it's actually overrated? Let us know your thoughts. Let us know why. Give us suggestions for albums you want us to do for this series. We're more
Mhm.
than happy to take a look at those. I know I've got a big list going here for when my choices come up, but I'm always willing to add to it. So thank you so much for watching. For Brad, this is Keith, and this is the KMB Music Den. Please like this video, share it on social media, subscribe to the channel, smash the bell for notifications. You'll be notified every time we drop new content. Brad, I'm so glad that this spoke to you so much, and I'm jealous of your vinyl copy, but I will work on that.
Hey, 37.99.
Hey, worth every penny, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, go Flyers, and we will see you folks soon. And thanks for watching. Take care.